Okay, so Father Lapsley, what made you come to South Africa from New Zealand in 1974?
I was born in New Zealand. I trained to be a priest of the Anglican Church in Australia and joined an Anglican religious order. And so when I finished my training, they asked me, what would you like to do next? And I said, I'd love to go to Japan. They said, that's great, we'll send you to South Africa.
Okay, that's quite
So
interesting.
in a sense, I was sent by my religious order.
Right.
But I knew from reading that something very terrible was happening in South Africa, something that was very opposite of my understanding of the Christian gospel. But nothing had, so I had lots of head knowledge, but nothing had prepared me for the experience of living in South Africa. Also, I thought that when I arrived in South Africa, I'd find three groups of people: the oppressed, the oppressor, the third group called the human race that I would belong to. And I think the first terrible shock to the system was to realize that simply because I'm white, I belong to the oppressor group. I can choose to act against it, but I still belong to that group. And I often say, why did I join the struggle? I joined the struggle to recover my own humanity. Because I often say that when I arrived in South Africa, I stopped being a human being and became a white man. So for me, joining the struggle was about recovering my own humanity in solidarity with people of color struggling for their own basic human rights.
So when you arrived in South Africa, you're saying that you just automatically became a white man and fell into that category.
Because of the objective reality, the fact that it was color that decided which university I could study at, which park bench I could sit on, which toilet I could use, which part of the sea I could swim in, were all decided objectively by the color of my skin. And so there was no escape from that reality. But I was very fortunate in that I became a student on the white campus in Durban. But also, as I was already a priest, I also became a university chaplain to the University of Durban Westville, which at that time was mainly students of Indian background, and the Black Medical School. And so, although I lived in this white world, I ministered to and created friendship from all the communities in South Africa. And I think that helped me to see that liberation had to be for everybody, or would be for nobody. We simply turned the tables and we still weren't going to be free.
And then that inspired you to become an activist and join the struggle.
Step by step.
And then you were expelled from South Africa in 1976, and you traveled the world to continue mobilizing support for the anti-apartheid struggle. When did you become aware of the Palestinian struggle?
Yes, I think it was probably in Zimbabwe because I was part of the ANC community in Zimbabwe and met with the Palestinian ambassador, and I guess I already knew some of that. And of course, when I was bombed, there were two ambassadors who came to see me in hospital in Zimbabwe. One was the Cuban ambassador, offering me free medical treatment in Cuba. The other was a Palestinian ambassador, offering to assist with the costs of treatment. So I always remember that. I think another factor was that the religious order that I belonged to, the Society of the Sacred Mission, one of the members of our community worked for a number of years at St. George's College in Jerusalem. And I remember him saying to us that often Christians who had open hearts and minds would come to Israel, Palestine, because of their upbringing, totally sympathetic to the Israelis. But as they witnessed the full reality of what was happening, changed sides and became committed and saw the fundamental injustice of what was happening to the Palestinian people.
Wow.
And of course, the majority of people who are Christian in Israel are Palestinian.
Palestinians, yes.
All the Christian community are Palestinian.
Yes. Wow, that's fascinating. Absolutely. Wow.
How long were you in Zimbabwe for?
I lived in Zimbabwe from 83 until 92. When I was expelled from the country, I went to live in Lesotho. And there was a massacre there in 82. I was away, but was believed by some to be one of the targets of the massacre. So I had to leave Lesotho. So then I went for a few months to Britain, and after that I came and spent the years in Zimbabwe. So that was where I also received the letter bomb in April of 1990. Was in Zimbabwe.
In 1990.
Yeah,
That's quite
three months
recent.
after the release of Nelson Mandela.
It's still very recent.
But I just want to also take back a fraction and say, you know, we speak today in a very specific way of Christian Zionism, but I think all of us in the Christian community were brought up with myths about Israel, a kind of view that until the state of Israel was created, it was all just desert.
Yes.
And then because of what Israel did, the desert began to flourish. But also the myth that the modern state of Israel created in 1947 was the same as the Israel that we speak of in the Bible. So even though many of us wouldn't say we were Christian Zionists, I think the Christian community across the world was effectively propagandized over very many years to have false views. But it only, I have to say that several years ago I visited Israel and Palestine. I never heard of the word Nakba. It was only when I met Palestinians there who told me about the Nakba of 1947 and the 700,000 Palestinians who were chased from their home. And in this present period, I've been hearing a Jewish person saying he was brought up believing in Zionism, and only much later did he learn about the Nakba, and his view began to change, where he saw that the modern state of Israel was created on a fundamental injustice, which almost guaranteed permanent conflict. And also learning how pre-1947, stretching back through the centuries, Christians and Muslims and Jews had lived together peacefully.
Exactly.
In that. But that was not the European Jews who then came at 1947.
So it's almost like the indoctrination from the young age.
Yes, but not for most of us in a systematic way. It was just there, and of course, it was always been possible to have a kind of insulated visit to the land of the Holy One. You know, you could go as a Christian pilgrim, and you would go to the holy places, the place where Jesus was born, crucified, all of that, but in a sort of almost in an acontextual way, with no facing of the reality of what the life was like, and the objective nature of Israeli apartheid, not just a question of attitude, but like in the situation in South Africa, an issue of structures. Structures, I mean, I always remember being shocked to find that there were even separate roads which only Jewish Israelis could travel on, and Palestinians could not travel on.
It's absolutely fascinating that there's so many similarities between the Palestinian struggle and the South African.
Similarities, but also differences, which is why the people like Frank Chikane and the Desmond Tutus of the world would say, actually, what's happening under Israeli apartheid was worse than what happened under South African apartheid. But I think the nature of our own history makes it very natural that we would identify the stories of the Palestinians resonate so profoundly with the majority of South Africans. But as many of us in the Christian community who haven't been there, or being confused by the subtle and unsubtle propaganda of the state of Israel over a very long time.
How would you suggest that this indoctrination or the systematic teaching of Christian Zionism, how could we combat that, do you think?
You know, the sad thing is that most of us as human beings are not changed by argument. We're changed by experience. Um, so the more, in a sense, that we have pilgrimages that are not that are contextual, not acontextual, I think that can also help. But I think also creating spaces where Palestinian people can tell their story.
Yes.
I think that often softens the heart. Just, I mean, in a sense, what's happened with world opinion? I mean, I think the world was horrified by October the 7th. And many people around the world thought this was the beginning, not the kind of dispossession and killings that had gone on since 1947 and before. But when the world saw what the State of Israel did since then, public opinion has shifted, and you've seen that the scale of demonstration across the world, where even the kind of the Western countries, their leadership has been left isolated because the populations are saying, no, not in our name, no. And just in this last couple of days, we've had this significant number of civil servants from United States and Britain, European countries, saying, actually, we are complicit with these crimes against humanity. And so although they, people brought up in a Western world, their own humanity at a certain point breaks through and says, no. So those voices are very, very, very important. But clearly the genocide could not happen on ongoing way without the active complicity of the United States, United Kingdom, and Germany. But the way public opinion has shifted is a sign of hope. Just as I think.
And you think, and social media has a massive role to play.
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. And especially
so
for a younger generation, they don't read newspapers and et cetera, but they get their news through social media.
Yes.
And I think the propaganda of Israel is being less and less effective. And I was hearing about people here in Cape Town who were totally pro-Israel, who shifted.
Yes.
Because of what it's like scales have dropped from their eyes as they begin to see the reality. And I think also, and it played here in South Africa, it's many places, the significant number of Jewish people coming out and supporting a free Palestine. That is a sign of hope, just as in a sense, those of us who are white, who are part of the struggle against apartheid, were able to point to the system and then people like I said, not in our name, and I think we see again as kind of parallel, and in the United States, huge number of Jewish people coming out against the genocide in support of the Palestinians.
What lessons do you think we can learn from the liberation from apartheid of South Africa that we can apply to the liberation of Palestine and ushering in a democracy?
As a nation, and the liberation movement was, and all those involved in the struggle were saying to the people of the world, we will free South Africa, but you can shorten the time and lessen the cost through your solidarity. So boycott. So I think and we as a nation were perhaps more fortunate than most people in the world in terms of the scale of solidarity the world gave us. And there are many other places. A place that I'm very connected to is Myanmar. They're not getting that kind of support. The most terrible things are happening. But and similarly, with Yemen and with South Sudan, Sudan at the moment. But I think solidarity. And I think this is where BDS has an important role to play. And BDS, in a sense, has I think, been inspired by our history as well. And I think also, with all the challenges we face now as a country, it would be easy to So look, let's just concentrate on home and not worry about other people. And I think the decision by our government to take Israel to the World War has given hope to the Palestinians. Israelis have not yet updated, um, but in a way, it's shown that there's always something that can be done. And I think in a way we've lifted, we've shown that as a nation we still have a moral compass, and we are able to make a contribution in the world. And clearly, countries of the South, almost all of them keep mentioning, thank you, South Africa,
Yes.
you know, for what we've done. And messages from, I mean, even demonstrations happening in the West Bank, holding up, well, thank you, South Africa.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
So
I think we
so
all are
that's the
proudly
big
South
lesson.
African.
Yeah,
with
proudly
that.
South African. But we need to say, well, what's the next? What's the next?
What would you say to South Africans who say that we have our own problems and we shouldn't be focusing on the problems in the Middle East?
Yeah, there's a kind of expression that charity begins at home. If that was true, we wouldn't have had a worldwide solidarity movement ourselves. And I suppose, in a sense, the great example in the world is Cuba. That they become free in 1959, the triumph of the revolution. They had a nation to build, but part of the way they built the nation was showing solidarity to the peoples of Asia, Africa, Latin America. So in a sense, Cuba is, if you like, the counter argument. So let's just worry about what is a point. And it speaks to, in the end, the most important thing about us is it's not our race, our language, our religion. It's our common humanity. And it's on that basis. So yes, we need to focus on the mess we're in, and the scale of greed and corruption. But that correctly didn't stop us from going to the World Court.
Yeah. Do you have a message for everybody out there?
Free Palestine. And ceasefire now. And also that we all have a role to play. Let's discover the roles that we can play, given who we are. But also educate ourselves. Learn about the history. Learn about the Balfour Declaration. Begin to understand that there was a fundamental injustice in the creation of the state of Israel. And the Israelis themselves will not be, they will not be free or secure until there's a free Palestine. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
One or two journeys. One is victims who become victimizers, or victims who move towards victory.
So I missed that one.
Victims who become victimizers, or who move towards victory. You're no longer a prisoner of what's happening. And you see that cycle in individuals, communities, and nations. So what's the Israel's response? Revenge. What's the United States response? Revenge.
Victimize more.
Yeah. So but you see it in domestic violence, in gender-based violence.
Yes.
It crosses generations.
Yes.
Men who haven't dealt with their stuff, and they carried out on the intimate partners or their children, or whatever. Getting a memories about how do you break the cycle that turns victims into victimizers. I think the first step is when you recognize that we have good reasons to hate, to be better, to want revenge. One is destroy us. No? So then we begin to say, okay, how do I begin to restore them? But often I can't let go of it until it's been heard, who is being acknowledged. Then they can begin to
Understand and break it down.
Yeah.
You just love it.